This is a book folded candle, or rather two of them. The second simplest book fold in existence, the hedgehog being the simplest of the lot. This is almost the same fold, only with a cutout at the top to take a little LED nightlight. You can have fat candles or thin candles, both at the same height as a paperback book, perhaps not surprisingly. The fat one is a little over the same width as the book you make it from. The thin one is about half that. So this time this is going to be a candle rather than a hedgehog. The difference, as you'll have seen from the still picture, is that the candle is going to be a completely round object, whereas the hedgehog was a semicircle. So you might think it would take approximately twice as many pages. In fact, the hedgehog used up to page 100. I found a large candle works better with a page count up to about 300. So 2 lots of 150, somewhat denser than the hedgehog. But I'm not going to do all that lot in one go. This is a roughly 600 page book, so I've got plenty here. And again, we'll start with removing front and back covers. So they're going to be less use. And then I'm going to take off roughly 150 to work with to start with. About there. And tear that. Right, that's enough to start with. Now, when this forms a candle, that nightlight is going to be sitting in there. And I do mean in, not on. So we're going to need a little cutout to put it into. This is just under 2 centimetres that way and just under 4 that way. So we want a 2 by 2 centimetre cutout at the top of the spine. So at this point I take a pencil, we'll mark it about there. It only needs to be approximate, about there. And we're going to cut out that much. This time I'm working on a cutting board because I'm going to be using a sharp knife and I don't really want to damage my table. A Stanley knife would be good for this. This is just a fairly sharp kitchen knife. And it's going to take several goes to cut through that. Take out a few pages at a time. As if we're trying to save this for anything. Well, I suppose in theory you could regard this as a very small book to do another book fold with, but I'm not into that at the moment. We just want to get it out. There. This is another reason not to try to do 300 pages in one go. That would be quite a job of cutting. Incidentally, if you ever want to teach this to small children, this is probably a bit where we'd say let an adult do this for you. Because pressing hard with a sharp blade, well, you don't need telling, do you? Almost there. I'll tack that from the other side for this bit. Okay, good enough. As I say, we're not after great precision here. Right, now in the hedgehog fold, we would have folded it right back to there, but that would be blocking this bit where we want to put the candle. So what we're actually going to do is fold to the edge of the cut, like so. And then the second fold, again, we don't want it to go into the area where that night light is going to be, but because it's at a diagonal, that isn't a problem. So here we fold to a few millimetres from the spine, like so. And again, fold that to there. can see that that edge is going in line with the text, so I can tell that it's at a nice clean right angle. And on like that. And that gives you some idea what the whole thing is going to look like. A candle about that much across with a gap that that night light is going to fit into. And just as with the hedgehog, this is probably where I do a load of work and come back to you later, because this could take a while. Okay, so that's done almost all of it, and it's looking like quite a fat hedgehog here, or rather a fat candle, since it's got that cut out. And just to show you why I didn't really want to go more than page count 150, it's getting really quite difficult to hold the page flat at this point. This fold is easy enough. This one is really getting quite difficult. 150 is as much as I feel like doing in one blat. So that would have been somewhat fatter than the hedgehog we had before, considerably denser. But when you put it upright like that, don't know if you can quite see there, that's about the sort of density I want for my candle. So what I'm going to do now is take the next 150 pages from the same book. Well, in this case it's the same book. You could in fact use pages from an identical book, that just the same size. In this case I had plenty of book to go. So I've cut out the next 150 and I'm going to do exactly the same process again. That's roughly how thick it looks there. That's what it's going to turn into. And I'll come back to you again when I've done that. Okay, so I now have two half candles like that. One there, one there. Almost, but not quite the same height, but close enough. My cutting can't have been quite accurate. And eventually it's going to look like that. But first of all, I have a bit of gluing things together to do. This is going to be roughly the same technique as I used for attaching the hedgehog to his base. So I'm going to start off by attaching some of these loose pages down a bit, since the whole thing is going to be providing support for the rest. Stick that down to there. And same technique on this one. Okay. Now I'm going to try to stick the flats of the pages together. Possibly also gluing that down a little harder, because that page looks to me as if it's about to all come undone. And I'm also going to try to stick the spine to the spine. Now, since the spines are slightly hollow, oops, sorry, knocking the camera there, that's going to need some fairly thick glue, and what I'm going to use is a hot glue gun, which is why I've moved my base of operations, because hot glue and a wooden kitchen table aren't necessarily things I want to go together. Hot glue doesn't actually stay sticky for very long at all. So first of all, I'm going to apply this double-sided sticky tape to the paper side of things. That'll stay sticky for quite a bit longer. And then I'll put the hot glue on. And then we'll hold it all together and hope. Because this doesn't always take as well as I prefer. Like my sticky tape is going to play up on me. Right, that should do the trick. Right, let's see if the hot glue has warmed up nicely. That's looking quite good. and a bit down the centre of the other one, fairly quick, because as I say, this isn't going to stay sticky for terribly long. Stand them up and push them together. And then it's going to be time for decoration, and there's an extra trick to this. Just to hold things in place while I'm doing it, I'll just stick a few rubber bands around that. Right, that's actually creasing the pages a little bit, but doesn't matter too much, just as long as this whole thing isn't going to fall apart on me, and I don't think it is. Although those pages aren't sticking together quite as well as I might have hoped. Still, we can survive this. What I usually do at this point is very simple. I just stick some ribbon around it. In this case, it not being Christmas, I'm going for a kind of feathery yarn that I could use for knitting or crochet, but I think looks rather attractive here. And I'll just put it round there about 3 times and tie a knot. And then after a while I'll remove those rubber bands, because they're just not going to be needed anymore. Looks about right to me. Reasonably firm knot. This is actually compressing the pages very slightly as I do it. Need to be a little bit careful of that because we don't want it all crushed. But that'll need to be worked up a bit, but that's the basic concept. And snip that off there. Right, I'll just remove those rubber bands now, since the ribbon should do their job. Bring it all up together and just dress it a little bit, as it were. This is why I feel that having a slightly denser fold than a hedgehog is quite a good idea. Otherwise you tend to get gaps which can look a little bit untidy. But that, I think, is really quite a nice candle. It just needs its nightlight put in the top. And we're there. I mentioned at the start that you can also do a thin candle as well as a fat one. I won't trouble you with the full video of how to do that, since it's almost identical. I'll just tell you that on each page you do one more fold than you had on the thick candle. You're going to need fewer pages. Go ahead and experiment, but a page count of about 100 per half candle is probably about right. You fold each page the same as for the fat candle, and then in half again, only instead of going close to the spine, you fold to the same place as the first diagonal, so to the edge of the cutout. Any further in and you'd be blocking the cutout at the top. Other than that, the process is just the same as for the fat candle, and you can see at the picture at the start they make rather a nice matching pair.